Hi, my name is Emily Terpak, and I am a realtor in the greater Philadelphia area, which means I cover all of Philadelphia County and the surrounding suburbs in Pennsylvania and South Jersey. In this video, I'm going to be talking about why condos don't appreciate as much as houses in Philadelphia. Because if you've ever considered buying a condo in Philadelphia, you might be wondering what's a better investment, a house or a condo? And in general, condos just don't appreciate as much as houses, generally speaking. So they appreciate slower than row homes, twins, and single family homes. But a lot of people don't explain why. And it's not just one simple reason, it's actually a combination of factors, some of which are universal to condos everywhere, and some are specific to how Philadelphia's housing market actually works. I'm going to break down every piece of it so that if you are considering a condo, you're going in with it eyes wide open because a condo can still be the right move for you. You just need to understand what you're trading. Now, let's get into it. One of the biggest reasons why condos appreciate slower really comes down to something that most buyers don't even think about at all: land. When you buy a single family home, a twin, or a row home, you're not just buying the structure itself, you're also buying the land underneath of it. And the land itself can also appreciate over time. The building, like any other structure, can also appreciate, but the land holds value and grows over time because land has a fixed supply. No one's making more of it. See, when you buy a condo, okay, you own your unit, the interior space, but you don't own a meaningful share of land. You own a piece of a building sitting on land that's shared on paper across dozens or hundreds of other owners. So you're kind of missing out on the exact piece of the equation that can drive long term appreciation the most. Think about it like this: have you ever heard that McDonald's isn't actually in the food service business? They're in the real estate business because they own so much real estate across the whole globe at this point, right? So it's kind of like that. You kind of want to own a piece of land for your property to really appreciate. Now let's talk about supply and density. Basic economics, okay? So when supply increases, prices tend to soften, assuming that demand doesn't increase at the same pace. Now, a condo building can fit far more units on a single parcel of land than a row of individual houses ever could. Think about it. One condo building might hold 50, 100, sometimes hundreds of units on a footprint that would only fit maybe a handful of row homes. That means that for any given desirable location, there's simply a much higher volume of condo inventory available compared to houses. And when your unit is competing with dozens of others in the very same building, often with identical layouts, that abundance works against price growth. Next, there is something called the identical unit problem. So, this factor is really specific to how condo buildings work in general, and it's one that I see outplayed constantly. Condo buildings are often built and renovated in phases or all at once, which means units tend to share very similar finishes, layouts, and upgrades. So let's say you own unit 503 and you list it for sale, and around the same time, unit 303 goes to the market too. Given the way that these buildings are numbered, those two units are probably nearly identical. Same layout, same finishes, same view, and more than likely, the exact same square footage. That's a very different situation than a row home neighborhood where even homes right next to one another can vary widely in condition, updates, and character, and so on and so forth. So, that built in competition between nearly two identical units inside the same building keeps a natural ceiling on price growth because buyers can simply compare one unit to another unit within the same walls. Now let's talk about the HOA fee, because this is where condo pricing gets really interesting and where I think a lot of people misunderstand what they're actually looking at. When you're financing a home, okay, what matters most to a lender and honestly to you as the buyer isn't just the mortgage payment, it's your total monthly housing costs. Now, for a condo, that means mortgage plus HOA fees combined. So a condo with a $700 a month HOA fee is going to be priced lower than a nearly identical condo with a $500 HOA fee because buyers are budgeting for that monthly number, not just the sales price. And here's the thing about HOA fees. They don't just stay flat. In fact, they actually tend to rise over time, sometimes significantly, especially if a building has deferred maintenance or is just poorly managed in general. And a rising HOA fee actively works against your unit's value because it makes your total monthly cost less competitive against other options on the market, including houses or row homes that have no HOA fee at all. Then there's the special assessment risk, okay? If a building needs a larger sum of money for repairs beyond what it has saved in reserves, say for a new roof, elevator replacement, facade work, owners can get hit with a special assessment, sometimes tens of thousands of dollars. I know I've personally seen assessments as high as $36,000. And if you try to sell a unit where there's a special assessment that's unpaid, you can expect buyers to factor that straight into their offer and offer you a lower sales price. Here's a factor that's specifically true in Philadelphia. Okay. And it really just comes down to lifestyle fit and the buyer pool size. Condos tend to appeal to a narrower slice of buyers, often single buyers, couples without kids, or people who specifically want a low maintenance lifestyle. Families, on the other hand, tend to shy away from condos largely because of limited storage and less flexible space. That means that the buyer pool competing for any given condo is smaller than the buyer pool that's competing for a comparable house, which honestly just appeals to virtually everyone, single people, couples, and families alike. And smaller buyer pools mean less competition, and less competition means less upward pressure on price. It's kind of simple supply and demand, but applied to buyers instead of inventory. Now, here's what makes Philadelphia different from a city like New York. In New York City, if you want to own property, your realistic options are largely condos or extremely expensive brownstones. There just isn't much of a middle ground. But in Philadelphia, houses are generally comparatively affordable. We have an enormous amount of inventory of row homes across nearly every neighborhood in the city, and at price points that are often the same as or even lower than a comparable condo once you factor in that monthly HOA fee. So in Philly, buyers who might otherwise consider a condo often just don't, because they look at the math and realize that a row home gets them a similar or lower monthly payment with land ownership and no HOA fee. And they go that route instead. And that dynamic, houses being genuinely competitive on price with condos, is a big part of why condos appreciation lags even more noticeably here than in cities where houses simply aren't a realistic option for most buyers. Okay, so should you avoid buying a condo? Now, I want to be really clear, okay? None of this means that condos are a bad choice per se. It just means that you need to understand what you're trading. Condos can be a fantastic entry point into homeownership, especially if you're a single buyer or a couple without kids who just wants a lower purchase price and they don't want to deal with maybe exterior maintenance, yard work, or roof repairs. And some buildings have real lifestyle value too. They have a door person, a secure parking, rooftop deck, and just amenities that you would never get in a similarly priced home. I've also had a client one time who specifically wanted a condo because she was living alone and just wanted the peace of mind that there were other people around. And when she explained it like that, it actually kind of made some sense. The trade-off is simply this. You're generally getting convenience in exchange for slower long-term appreciation. Now, that's not a bad trade for the right buyer. It's just a different investment than a house and should be evaluated with different expectations. So that's the real breakdown of why condos in Philadelphia tend to appreciate slower than houses. No land ownership, higher density and supply, the identical unit problem within buildings, rising HOA fees and special assessments, and just a smaller buyer pool in general. And in a city where housing prices are generally competitive alongside condos. If you're weighing a condo against a house right now, I'd love to help you run the actual numbers for your specific situation, because the right answer really does depend on your lifestyle, your budget, and how long you plan to stay. So drop a comment with what you're considering and check out my videos on property types and how pricing works in Philly if you want to go even deeper. Thanks for watching, and I will see you at the next one.